Alright, here's the review for Chapter 7. Let's start out with secant of 4. We're in between 270 and 360. Find tangent. Well, the secant is the opposite of the cosine, so the cosine is equal to 1/4, and so we have this picture. So we got 1 squared plus b squared equals 4 squared. So 1 plus b squared equals 16. Subtract over the 16. And we got b equals the square root of 15. But since this is down, we have negative square root of 15. So the tangent turns out to be the opposite, which is negative square root of 15, over the adjacent, which is 4. Alright, for this one, since we have sine and we have cosecant, those two are reciprocals of each other. So without doing much work, the reciprocal of negative 1/4 is negative 4. For this one, we have cotangent over cosine. And we're trying to simplify this. So I'm going to change cosine over sine. And I left the cosine by itself on the bottom. When you divide by a fraction, you multiply by the reciprocal. And the reciprocal of 1 over cosine, or cosine is 1 over cosine. The cosines cancel and we're left with 1 over sine. Well, we're not looking for 1 over sine. We want to change that. So to flip the 1 over sine back over, we wind up with cosecant. Here's another simplified one. First, I'm going to multiply these together. So 1 times cosecant is cosecant theta. 1 times negative cotangent theta is negative cotangent theta. Then I multiply cosine, so we got plus cosine theta, cosecant theta, and then plus cosine theta, cotangent theta. So we're going to change this to be 1 over sine theta minus cosine over sine theta plus cosine theta times 1 over sine theta plus cosine theta cosine theta over sine theta. So 1 over sine, so all of these have a sine theta in the bottom. So I got 1 minus cosine theta plus cosine theta minus, this was the times up here, cosine squared theta. All divided by sine theta. Well, the negative cosine theta and the cosine theta cancel out. This one we can change to be sine squared plus cosine squared minus cosine squared over sine theta. And those two cancel out again because cosine squared minus cosine squared is 1. So if we have sine squared divided by sine, well, one of the sines cancel and I'm left with sine. So this part right here, for those of you having trouble, is cosine over sine times cosine. Or actually, cosine theta times cosine theta over sine theta. Alright, here we're looking for tangent. Well, cosine over sine is the same thing as cotangent, but they're not asking for what cotangent is equal to. We got cosine theta over sine theta to start out with, which was cotangent. So when we have cotangent, we want to change it to tangent, we're taking the reciprocal, so we take the reciprocal of the other side. Alright, the formula for sine 2 theta is 2 sine theta cosine theta. And we have cosine theta. We'll do this in quadrant 1, since I didn't put it in there before. We got 3 over 10, and we got 3 squared plus b squared equals 10 squared. When you do the Pythagorean theorem, that turns out to be the square root of 91. So we got 2 times the square root of 91 over 10 times 3 over 10, which gives us 6 square roots of 91 over 10, or 3 square roots of 91 over 5. For the cosine of 2 theta, since they give us cosine, I'm going to use the formula that has cosine squared. So we're going to do 2 times 3/10 squared minus 1, which equals negative 41 over 50. Now, in order to get the tangent of 2 theta, we're doing the sine over the cosine. I'm sorry, up here, that should have been 100, and this should have been 50, because 10 times 10 is 100, not just leaving it as 10. So the tangent of 2 theta is just the sine divided by the cosine. Well, here's the sine, and here's the cosine, and the 50s are going to cancel out, so we have 3 square roots of 91 over negative 41. And so that's still negative. So there are my 3 answers. Sine was 3 square root of 91 over 50. Cosine was negative 41 over 50. And tangent was 3 square root of 91 over 41. Negative. Alright, for this one we're going to solve between 0 and 2 pi. We got 2 sine squared minus the sine. So I'm going to factor out a sine theta, since that's what they have in common. And we have 2 cosine theta minus 1 equals 0. So I set them each equal to 0. That one's already finished. And there we have our second answer of cosine theta equals 1/2. So the sine is equal to 0 at 0, or the other way, which is pi. So 2 of my answers are going to be 0 and pi. The cosine is positive in the first quadrant. And there's cosines, which means we have a 30, 60, 90 triangle, which means we have 60 in there. Well, 60 is the same thing as pi over 3 when we change it to radians. We also have the same thing down here, where if the reference angle is 60, then the actual angle is 300. Well, when we change 300, and remember we change it by multiplying by pi over 180, that turns out to be 5 pi over 3. So here are 4 answers, and there's a little bit more review from what we did in class.